absent, I do record third period and post it every day so you can watch it. Okay, so if the number on the top is negative, if this number is negative, then that tells me that I'm looking for two numbers that have different signs. So I'm looking for two numbers that have different signs. Okay? And because the bottom number is positive, I know that the bigger number is positive. Bigger number positive. Okay? So I want you to look at your pink sheet and find where is 36. Where does 36 pop up? And then write down all the places where you see that 36. So, for example, do you see it in the twos? Yep. 2 times what? 18. Do you see it in the threes? 3 times what? What about the fours?
9.
Yep, 4 times 9. And then there's one other place. Oh, actually, yeah, 6. So 6 times 6. Okay, so whenever this number is negative at the top, that means I'm looking at the difference between these numbers. I need the difference to be 16. So if you take 6 minus 6, do you get 16? All right, I'm crossing that out. What about 18 minus 2? Is 18 minus 2 16? If you're not sure, pick up your calculators and test it out. 18 minus 2. 18 minus 2 is 16. So I can stop looking. I found my numbers. Here we are. So I have a 2 and I have an 18. The bigger number is positive, which means the 18 is positive and the 2 will be negative. These are my two numbers. That's the hardest part of factoring, is finding these two numbers. All right, I'm not going to do all of these. I'm going to skip around. Let's look at question number 3. So whenever this is a positive number, I know that my numbers have the same sign. Same sign. And because they add to a negative, that means that they are both negative. So I want you to look at your multiplication chart. Write down all the places where you see a 24. So all the places where you see a 24, you should see it in the 2s. You should see it in the 3s. You should see it in the 4s. Okay, because this number is positive, I know I'm looking at the sum. I'm going to add these together to get 14. So which one of these pairs will add to be 14? 2 times 12. 2 plus 12 is 14. So that means that it's 2 and 12, and they both are negative. So that would be a negative 2 and a negative 12. All right. You skip around. Let's see where else. All right, let's look at question 4. Nope, let's look at question 5. Number 5 has a negative at the top. So what does that tell me about the signs? Are they the same or different? Different. So let's write that. And because there's a negative 21 on the bottom, does that mean that the bigger number is positive or negative? Right, good. The bigger number is negative. Yes, Kaden? Did you have a question? Yep. All right, so I want you to look at your chart and write down every place where you see a 72. So this one actually, I should have probably skipped this one because this one, your chart is not big enough to show this one. And I'm gonna look for a bigger chart. I'm gonna look for a 30 by 30 instead of a 20 by 20 because you won't find this number is not, your chart isn't big enough. So I'm actually just gonna give you the numbers. The numbers would be 24 and 3. And I'll look for a bigger chart. Which number am I making negative, the 24 or the 3? The 24. All right. So let's look at number 6. I like 6. So for question 6, we are looking for signs that are different. And you see how they add to 0? Whenever you see a 0 at the bottom, that tells me I have opposite numbers. Opposite numbers would be 2 and negative 2, 3 and negative 3, 4 and negative 4. So what do you think my opposite numbers are that multiply to negative 1? There's only one thing that multiplies to be 1. There's only one pair of numbers that multiply to be 1. What 2 numbers multiply to give you 1? 1 times 1, right? And because it adds to 0, that tells me that one of the numbers is negative. All right, let me find a good one. All right, let's look at 7. Okay, your chart is definitely big enough for that. So because this is positive, what does that tell me about my signs? Are they the same or different? Same sign. And because there's a negative at the bottom, I know that they're both negative. So I can automatically put a negative. Both of my numbers are negative. So thumbs up when you know my numbers. They multiply to be 13 and add to negative 14. I'm pretty sure 13 just shows up in one spot on your chart. Because 13 is a prime number. So you're only going to see it in the 1 column and the 13 column. So what are my numbers? Yep, negative 13 and negative 1. All right, I'm going to give you all a chance to do number 8 by yourself. So am I looking for the same sign or different signs? Different. I'm going to write that at the top, different. And my bigger number is going to be positive. So I'm going to write big, positive. All right, so I'm going to give you a minute to find 34. Figure out where 34 is on your chart. Find those numbers. I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to be 34, multiply to be negative 34, and add to 15. All right, so where does 34 show up? 2 and what else? Okay, so 2 and 17, that looks like that's promising because I need the numbers to subtract to give me 15. And 17 minus 2 is 15. So I know that my numbers are going to be the 17 and the 2. And the 2 will be negative and the 17 is positive. All right, the last question, I want you to try to do it on your own. Number 9. It's easy when you have everything positive. So I'm just looking for 2 positive numbers. They multiply to 9, add to 6. Don't say it out loud. If you know it, put it on your X. 2 positive numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 6. Nine only shows up in 2 places. Well, it shows up in the 1s, the 3s, and the 9. Thumbs up if you know my numbers. I'm just curious how many people got me. Who got it? Okay, that's good. See, I knew we would get there. The only thing that multiplies to 9 is 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. But 1 plus 9 is 10, so it can't be that. 3 plus 3 is 6, so it would be 3 and 3. So now that we have that, now let's apply that to what we're learning. So take out your note packet, and let's go to page 14. And I want you to do both of these. 2 numbers that multiply to 36 and add to 13. 2 numbers that multiply to be negative 27 and add to negative 6. So I'm going to give you a few minutes with your chart to find my 2 numbers. That's what we've been practicing, finding the 2 numbers. So we're going to start factoring trinomials, which is you have to find these numbers. So looking at your chart, find your numbers. For this first one, I know it's 2 positive numbers. And for this one, I know I have different signs. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to try to do this by yourself because you have to be able to find these numbers on your own in order to factor a trinomial. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, see if you can find those numbers. I'm just going to peek over your shoulder to see how many of you all find the numbers. So the two numbers that multiply to be 36 and add to 13, everyone whose paper I saw had 9 and 4. I agree. Two numbers that multiply to be negative 27 and add to negative 6. Negative 9, positive 3. All right, so we're going to start factoring where you have a leading coefficient of 1, which sounds kind of mathy. But let's go to page, still same page. It says look for A. You always start by looking for a GCF, which again is your greatest common factor. And then you're going to check for the difference of perfect squares, which we'll talk about that later. And then after you do that, you're going to do your product sum. We have to do that product sum puzzle. Every time we factor, we have to do a product sum puzzle. Okay, so we're going to make our box. And whenever we create our box, we create it the same way. So remember, when we were multiplying, we put everything on the outside, and then we filled in the inside. We're going to do the opposite. We're going to fill in the inside and then take stuff out. Okay, so we're going to make our box. This sounds confusing, but I'm going to go through it anyway. We're going to make our box. The number on top of the box is always going to be A times C. The number on top of the X, is always going to be A times C. The number at the bottom is B. So let's just get to it, because I think it sounds confusing when it's really not. So let's look at 15. Let's just get to it. So can you write at the top AX squared plus BX plus C? Write that at the top. The number in front of X squared is A. The number in front of X is B. And the number the number at the end is your C. Okay? So I'm looking at this. In this equation, we have an invisible 1 in front of X squared. Can you write that 1 in? So let's go ahead and make our X. In this equation, A is 1. B would be what? What's the number in front of X? Negative 9. And what's C? 18. So what I want you to do is I want you to multiply A times C. What is 1 times 18? 18. Put that number on top of the X. B always goes on the bottom. So now we need to pause, because you need to find these numbers. Don't say it out loud when you find them. We need two numbers that multiply to positive 18 and add to negative 9. So I know I'm looking for two numbers that have the same sign and they're both negative. So take a few minutes, try to find those two numbers. So two numbers that multiply to be 18 and add to negative 9. Thumbs up when you think you know the numbers. I'm just curious. Okay, we're getting there. Got about half of us. All right, who wants to volunteer those numbers? Anybody? What you get?
-6 and -3.
-6 and -3. Who agrees with Alan? All right, so now we're going to make our box. So I want you to make a box. Just like so. Now, instead of putting the stuff on the outside, we're going to put it on the inside. So in this first box, top left is always going to be ax squared. So I'm going to put this 1x squared, put that right here. 1x squared goes right there. It's always top left. And then diagonal to it, the bottom right is C. What is C in this example? What's C? All right, that goes here. And the other two squares is your magic numbers. So I want you to put a -6x and a -3x. We just have to add an x to it. That's the numbers that we found. And now we're going to take out our GCFs. So when I'm looking at these two, what is the greatest common factor? Everybody look at the screen. What's the greatest common factor for these two squares? What do they both have that I can take away? 1 and what else? X. So we're going to put that on the outside. When I look at the bottom row, 3 and 18 have a GCF of 3. And it always, whatever you take out has to match the sign of the square it touches. So because it's touching a box with a negative, I'm going to take that negative on the outside. All right, now let's look at the first column. GCF of this column, 1x. GCF of the second column, -6. So what you're going to do is write your parentheses. And now inside of the parentheses, you have 1x minus 6 times 1x minus 3. That is your factors. And we're going to spend a long time doing this skill. I know for many of you all, it's the first time you've seen this. So we're going to slow it down. We're going really slow so you all can grasp it. All right, so let's just do one more and then we'll end there. Let's just do example 2 because I realize this is a lot. So in this example, we have our A is +1. Again, there's a +1 right here. B is +5. C is -14. Make your X. On top of the X is A times C. 1 times -14 is -14. B goes at the bottom. Don't say it out loud. Find my two numbers. Two numbers that multiply to be -14 and add to 5. So write it, and we know that they're going to have opposite signs. They're going to have different signs. Anybody know my numbers? Thumbs up if you know my numbers. All right, so you all getting good at this. Who wants to volunteer my numbers? 7 and -2. Sound good to me. That's the only two numbers that's going to work. Let's make our box. (1x squared) goes in the top left. -14, bottom right. And the other two squares can flip-flop. So I'm going to put a +7x in one square and a -2x in the other square. All right, go ahead and take out your GCFs. So now you're taking stuff out of the box instead of filling the inside of the box. You're looking at 2 squares at a time, giving me the greatest common factor. 2 squares at a time. So let's look at this first row together. What do you think my GCF would be of these 2 squares? What do they both have that I can take away? X, good. And the key here is that, well, I don't want to say that because it changes later. All right, so then when we look here at the bottom row, what do you think I'm taking out of both of these 2? What do they both have? What number can I divide into both of these numbers? A -2. It has to be negative because it's touching a negative square. The first column, what's my GCF? What do they both have that I can take out? X, 1x, yep. Second column, what do they both have that I can take out? So what number can you think of that will go into 7 and 14? Not 2. No, 2 doesn't go into 7. +7. So, because the only number that goes into 7 and 14 is a 7. So my factors are what you have across the top and what you have down the side. All right, I'm going to end there and give you all the last 15 minutes of class to work on that GCF assignment. If you need to borrow crayons, go ahead and do that. If you have homework 5 finished, you can show that to me. And we can, I can give you your points. Today's the last day to get extra credit for homework 5. I'm going to pass out homework 6. And there's 2 questions I want you to cut out. You can just cross them out. So I'll pass that out now.